we'll get moving.
All right, great. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks everyone for joining us today for what we hope will be a brief but informative review of our draft Unified Planning Work Program here at CDTC. I am Sandy Misiewicz. I'm the Executive Director of the Capital District Transportation Committee. We probably all know how to do Zoom workshops and webinars at this point, but just as a reminder, mute your mic during the presentation. We'll take questions at the end. You can ask questions via the Q&A box, or you can type a question, or you can open reactions and raise a hand and we can acknowledge you that way. So we will, again, take questions at the end. But today's presentation, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my PowerPoint today. Today's presentation, we're going to talk about what the UPWP is, how we developed it, and what's in it. It's simple as that. So as a reminder of who we are, we're the Capital District Transportation Committee, the Metropolitan Transportation Planning Organization for the Capital Region. We basically program and assign all of the federal transportation dollars that come from the Federal Highway Administration, and in some ways, the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, to plans and projects in the 4 counties we serve, largely Saratoga, Albany, Rensselaer, and Schenectady counties. Our partner agencies, we work with the State DOT, CDTA, the Regional Planning Commission, Port of Albany, the Airport Authority, and the Thruway Authority, along with our local government members, to collaborate on the comprehensive, continuing, and consensus-driven transportation planning process here in the Capital Region. As an MPO, we are legally required to develop 3 products. Our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is the region's long-range transportation plan covering a 20-year time frame. We update it every 5 years, currently known as New Visions 2050. We also are required to develop a capital program of transportation projects called the Transportation Improvement Program. We just completed an update of that document to represent the federal fiscal years of 2022 through 2027. And what we're here talking about today is the Unified Planning Work Program. And what is the UPWP? It essentially is an annual work plan that describes all of the different tasks to be undertaken by CDTC related to transportation planning in the state fiscal year that begins April 1st and ends March 31st. The document includes who performs the work, whether it's staff or consultants, how long this task is intended to take to complete, the cost, and what the fund sources are. As I said, it's a federally required document, and it really is all-encompassing for CDTC because it also includes tasks and fund sources that CDTC receives from local government partners and other state and non-federal fund sources, as well as some fund sources that are other federal funds that aren't necessarily from traditional transportation agencies like Federal Highway Administration. So our UPWP is comprised of several components. We do an annual solicitation for planning projects from local governments and others. We also incorporate federally required planning initiatives, many of which are authorized through the current federal transportation law known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. We also incorporate planning initiatives that advance our regional transportation plan, New Visions 2050. And we, just to give you a sense of some of the funding that's available, which was a big increase over prior years, but the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law provided us over 1.8 million in Federal Highway Administration planning funds, and then another almost 480,000 in Federal Transit Administration planning funds. There's a new set aside in the federal bipartisan infrastructure law that requires us to assign almost $50,000 a year to complete streets work. And those of you who've worked with CDTC a lot in the past know we've had continuous investment in complete streets. So this set aside, we think, was targeting NPOs in other parts of the country that may not be doing this work at all. Will easily be able to use these funds for complete streets work. And then there's a new fund source that we were just recently awarded funding through, which is the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. And I'll talk about that a little later on. So to begin the process of updating the UPWP, we issued a call for projects back in October. At the time, we thought we would have about $1 million of federal planning funds, both from Federal Highway Administration and the FTA, to assign to projects, but we had a little bit of a budget correction in January, so that was reduced a bit to more in the neighborhood of $600,000. We had a pre-application workshop in October as well, and the application process resulted in 21 applicants, 4 proposals seeking bike skills training, 2 for technical assistance, and 15 for consultant assistance. And just as a reminder of the types of projects that we were issuing and offering in terms of eligibility, we had small scale technical assistance, which was really intended to be small, short duration, sort of CDTC staff time, just to help with small scale planning activities in local communities. The medium scale, which is traditionally known as our linkage program, or more broader community planning, these are more consultant-led initiatives. We capped and increased the cap this year to $150,000 of federal funds, but these are the ones that have typically been funded here at CDTC on a mass scale in communities across the region. And then we also offered the option of a regional planning project valued at upwards of $250,000, and that would be for a more regional scale effort that encompass many communities or an entire county, or even the entire region. And we just so happened that we didn't get any specific requests for that in this round of funding, but we may offer that opportunity in the future. Our staff evaluated the projects using these 7 criteria. Basically is the consistency with the federal planning factors and our long-range plan. Is the project in a census tract identified as low income or minority based on our environmental justice analysis? Is the project intermunicipal? Is there a strong commitment to the project? Does the proposed project implement a previously completed plan or other initiative here at CDTC? Is there enough local support for the project in terms of staff or volunteers? And whether or not the project was innovative or was bringing some new ideas to the region that could be tackling a tough transportation or land use issue. These 7 criteria were used to evaluate all of the consultants' proposals, so those 15 proposals I mentioned earlier, which are summarized here. And the 50 proposals covered a wide range of activities. We saw a lot of interest in complete streets, some parking and operations efforts, some land use efforts, including some zoning work. But overwhelmingly, it lended itself and tipped towards complete streets and how to integrate all of the different modes of transportation in sometimes limited study areas and with limited street space. We also looked at some secondary evaluation criteria, including the project budgets and whether or not the scope and the budget proposed made sense, the types of projects, if the sponsor attended our workshop back in October. We really looked at also geographic balance. That's important to CDTC to make sure that these funds are spread around the counties and the region as best we can. How many projects a sponsor was awarded in the last 5 years, and then the planning funds requested per capita. So all of these criteria were assessed by our staff. We made some recommendations to our planning committee earlier this month in February, and the planning committee ultimately recommended the following 6 projects for funding, including the Albany County Broadway Flood Resilient Multimodal Corridor Study, the Town of Milton's Town Center Plan Update, the Town of Rotterdam's Curry Road and Guilderland Avenue Multimodal Study, the Town of Colony's Central Avenue West Corridor Study, which is essentially the piece of Central Avenue from New Corner Road out to the Niskayuna Town Line, the Village of Castleton on Hudson's Complete Streets and Connections Plan, and the Village of Voorheesville's All Access Complete Streets Feasibility Study. In addition to these 6 consultant efforts, funding was recommended for a technical assistance project in the town of Bethlehem, which should have regional benefits as it relates to local street assessments for 25-mile-per-hour speed limits. And we also recommended funding for all 4 of the bike skills training applications for upwards of 8 individual bike skill training events in 2023. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we were very grateful and honored to be selected for funding as a region for a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. This project will allow CDTC and all of our project partners in the region to pursue Vision Zero safety planning. Vision Zero is a framework by which we try to acknowledge that any death or serious injury is unacceptable, and we will be making policy and program recommendations to make progress to achieve or at least aspire to achieve zero deaths and zero fatalities and serious injuries on our regional transportation system. The award was for over $1 million in federal funds, matched with upwards of almost $300,000 of local funds. And we'll be undertaking this study over a multi-year period. And we anticipate there to be a lot of public involvement, a lot of data analysis, and some detailed work in some of our local government communities throughout the region. So we're very excited about this opportunity. So what else is in the UPWP? I'll walk through sort of by category, the different types of projects and plans that we intend to pursue in this grouping, which is sort of what I'll term our CDTC Administrative grouping. We will be spending quite a bit of time building a new equity policy and program for CDTC, which is going to build upon our environmental justice and Title VI work. We'll also be investing more into our public participation work, building a new website, rebranding CDTC, expanding our social media presence, and updating our entire public participation policy. We'll also be investing in our ongoing technical assistance program with our partners at Capital District Regional Planning Commission. And this will be an on-demand resource available to local governments on a first-come, first-served basis. Once the funds run out, we will sort of end the opportunity to participate. In this next grouping is sort of our data collection and analysis related to infrastructure and census data. We have a contract with a consultant to do on-demand traffic counts. So if anyone who's in local government in the region has any needs for traffic count data collection, whether that be motor vehicle counts or bicycle and pedestrian counts, we have tools and resources available to do those for you. We also will be working with our partners at CDRPC to explore our new urban area boundary, which was established as part of the 2020 US Census. And that will require a little work on our part to update maps and our geography regarding the classification of roadways as urban versus rural. We're also going to be changing our approach to pavement condition inventory and slowly phasing out our windshield survey approach to hopefully pursue other approaches to that form of data collection. In this next grouping, this is some more of our long-range plan implementation activities. We will be continuing our support for our climate change initiative, which will be piggybacking off of a Clean Cities committee task that I'll talk about later on. We will be spending quite a bit of time beginning to create a new regional or metropolitan transportation plan. This will be the first year of a multi-year process. Our long-range plan will need to be updated by September of 2025. So we anticipate this year beginning that process. We will also be investing in our congestion management process, in which we will be analyzing our regional traffic data to look at congested corridors and develop fact sheets for each of the top congested corridors, maybe as many as 30, and developing recommendations for how to address congestion in those areas using tools such as operational improvements, new signal systems, adaptive signal systems, transportation demand management initiatives, walk and bike and transit, and other tools with, widenings being, the least preferred and the option of last resort. And those widenings would need to be strategic in nature. We're also embarking on a regional signal timing program to pilot an assessment of locally owned signals and recalibrating their signal timing patterns to account for changes in traffic and travel behavior over time. As many of these signals are older, they may not even have computer components in them, and the timing plans may be very outdated, particularly as a result of the COVID-19 changes in traffic. This next grouping furthers our long-range plan initiatives. These are more on the complete streets and safety side of the house. We'll continue to market our newly completed Complete Streets Design Guide, and we'll be hosting and making available Complete Streets workshops to local communities later on in the year. We will also be revamping what used to be known as our Capital Coexist Safety Education and Encouragement Program into something more that we hope will be developed as we pursue the Safe Streets for All project. And we'll give that program better definition moving forward. We will also continue to invest in ADA transition plan work in local governments, where we're assisting to create ADA transition plans in 3 communities this year. And then the Clean Cities program, as I mentioned, this is a non-FHWA FTA fund source, but it's a program that really allows us to stretch our dollars so that we can attack climate change topics, electric vehicle charging stations and fleets, but some of the climate work that can be done under Clean Cities and can also be done under our regular PL work. So we're making a hefty investment in reducing carbon in our planning work this year through the Clean Cities program, and we hope to continue that investment in future years as well. Our next grouping relates to project development in our transportation improvement program, the capital program. As I said earlier, we just completed a major update of our transportation improvement program. We expect some refinements and maybe a few new programs to be offered in the upcoming year. The TAP CMAQ program being one. There may be a solicitation in the future for the PROTECT program. There may also be a solicitation for the NEVI program or the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. So there could be small solicitations for capital funds in the upcoming year, but we don't expect there to be a major push like we saw in the last year. We also will be using our TIP project development support line to support planning activities related to reimagining I-787, the redesign or rebuild of the New York 378 bridge and its surrounding infrastructure. All of the planning and environmental linkage study planning projects in the region will be using this line to support staff activity related to those planning efforts. And in this next grouping, this is more sort of broad on some transit and safety initiatives, security, resiliency planning. We expect there to be a good investment in transportation demand management. We'll be doing a commuter survey to try to get a sense of the kinds of things that it takes folks to change behaviors and what are those options. We'll also be updating our coordinated human services transportation plan, which is a specialized plan to assess how transportation providers for human service agencies are coordinating their medical trips, whether that be for the disabled population or others with special needs for specialty transportation. And then this final grouping, we have a mixture of a couple of things. The first two relate to our ongoing support in communities in the region to provide traffic assessment services for generic environmental impact statements, where we basically are reviewing development proposals and assessing traffic mitigation fees related to those development proposals. And we do that by contract to communities. We're also still leading on behalf of the New York State Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, a shared transit planning and analytics initiative. This project is actually a multi-year project that will be wrapping up in 2023. So we expect there to be some interesting results coming from this study, as one of the pilot areas or one of the pilot agencies that was included in this project is CDTA. So we'll be looking forward to seeing the results of this project towards the end of 2023. And then the 4 remaining projects in this group are ongoing linkage studies that are carrying over from last year into this year. They will be added to the 6 new ones that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So we'll have a total of 10 going this year. The 4 that you're seeing on screen now are in various stages of development, but we do anticipate most of them finishing by the end of 2023, if not leaking just a little bit into 2024. So all in, this is a very detailed slide showing all of the various fund sources. There's a lot of acronyms here, but the main takeaway point is the final total budget, all matched funds going into our work plan for this year is over $5 million. And that's a significant investment in transportation planning and related activities in the region. And we're excited to have this opportunity to work with our local government and state and regional partners to implement this work plan that's being proposed. So when we kind of cobbled all of this together, going as far back as January, as I said, we took the staff planning work, we looked at the emphasis areas and the priorities of the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. We spoke with our advisory committees who may have developed some concepts. We looked at regional plans, and we conducted a preliminary survey to kind of get a sense from the public on what their priorities are. We took all of that information and folded it into the draft document that we're sharing with you today that includes all of the plans and projects that were evaluated and reviewed. And our planning committee acted on February 2nd to open a 25-day public review period. We expect that to close prior to our March 2nd policy board meeting, at which point our policy board, we hope, will review the comments received, make any needed adjustments, and adopt our work plan for the next fiscal year beginning April 1st. Related to that survey I mentioned, just to give you a little taste of what we heard, we received 53 survey responses, which is not an unexpected number given this was a very preliminary survey. But we heard that respondents placed a higher priority on topics like complete streets, transit, and safety over things like expanding roadway capacity and moving freight around. So when you look up and down this chart, you can see that the ranking of transportation issues seem to lean toward expanding mobility options and making sure things were safe for the users of the transportation system. And so now we're at the point in this process, as I said, that we've opened a 25-day public input period. Your input is important to us, and we'd like to hear your thoughts and comments on some of the initiatives that are included in the UPWP, anything that we may have missed or overlooked. You can review the document on our website. The URL is www.cdtcmpo.org/2023 UPWP. On the website, you will find a survey at which you can submit written comments. It's linked off of the website I just mentioned. There's also a link here on the survey on the slide. And if you're interested in learning more or you have additional questions following this presentation, you're welcome to come to our open house that we will be hosting here at the CDTC office on Wolf Road, technically One Park Place off of Wolf Road, on Tuesday, February 28th, between 4 and 7 p.m. And if you have questions about that, you're welcome to email us. Or if you'd like to submit additional comments, you can email us at cdtc@cdtcmpo.org. So with that, that gives you an overview of our work plan for the upcoming year. I'm happy to take any questions you have. And thank you very much for your time and your participation today. And do we have any questions from the attendees?
Looks like none so far. We'll just give it just a couple of seconds here in case someone is up. I think we finally got one. All right. What funding opportunities will be available from the CDTC for applicants that were not successful?
Good question. So depending on the type of project, the technical assistance program is one opportunity to approach some small scale work. So let's say, for example, you were hoping to win a larger consultant-led initiative, but we can take the technical assistance program and get you started. We can do some existing conditions assessment. We can maybe even do a little modeling of an area. We can even do some public engagement. So there's a lot of little things that we can do using the technical assistance money that can help set you up for a successful application next year.
Yeah, that was an excellent question. If anyone has any other questions, go ahead and get them in real quick. We'll give it just another second or two. All right, well, hearing none, we'll conclude the webinar for today. Thank you, Sandy, for so much for doing that in-depth walk through our UPWP. We hope that this has been helpful, and we hope to hear from all of you. Please fill out the form, send us an email, whatever suits you, and we'll see you the next time.
Thanks, everybody.